Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever and whenever you are joining us. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. As always, I am your host, the coach Nick Vesci. I'm joined by the boy Stephen Vesci.
What up?
And the man Stephen Comlow.
Hello.
Welcome back if you're a returning listener or viewer, and welcome to our show if you're new. Just to give a quick recap in case you're new and wondering what goes on here. We'll kind of give a rundown of what we think are the most noteworthy, eye-catching events from the sporting competition landscape from the previous week. So we're more focused on what happens on the field and kind of giving you some perspective as to what we saw and maybe some statistics, some analysis, and just maybe some fun and enjoyment. Because at the end of the day, as fans, we are ultimately doing this because we enjoy this. We enjoy watching sports. We enjoy talking about it. We enjoy the competition that comes with it because, at least in my opinion, you can learn a lot from it. And that's the second part of our show second goal is that if you learn something new every time you tune in, then we've done our job. We want this to be on some level educational, very similar to when you used to wake up. Maybe you were sick one day, or you just slept in, but you woke up, turned the TV on at Sports Center before school, and you learned a whole bunch of stuff about sports and about what was going on. And that's kind of what we want to bring back, and we want to provide to you. So before we get started,
you're gonna hear them.
All right.
Sports Center every day at 7 a.m.
Yes,
That was nice.
yes.
Our poor mom.
Yes, God.
Just sitting
Stuart
there
Scott.
watching us watch Sports
Watching
Center every
Stuart
single
Scott
day.
and Scott Van Pelt and John Anderson.
DP. Oh, I know.
DP.
He was 6 o'clock. He was always the late one.
Yeah, but before we get into our top catch of the week, just a reminder to follow us on all of our socials. That's on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook at WCME_sports. You can visit us on our website at WCMEsports.com. And as always, our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. Now, without further ado, we'll get into our top catch from this past week. And we decided to go with the Vanderbilt upset over Alabama on Saturday in college football. So if you missed it, Vanderbilt, the school in Nashville, Tennessee, the oftentimes punching bag of the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, they beat the vaunted number one ranked team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide, 40-35 in Nashville. Vandy's quarterback, Diego Pavia, who is a New Mexico State transfer, he had 252 yards through the air with 2 touchdowns to go along with another 56 on the ground, so over 300 total yards for him. It's the first win for Vanderbilt over an AP-ranked number one team in program history. It's also the first win in program history over a top 5 AP-ranked team. Previously, they were 0-60, which was literally the longest losing streak ever against top 5 opponents, which is pretty amazing. They entered the game as 22.5-point underdogs. It makes it the biggest upset for Vanderbilt since the FBS and the FCS split in 1978. A couple other crazy things here. In Nick Saban's entire tenure at Alabama, the whole time he was head coach, they allowed a total of 13 points to Vanderbilt.
How many years?
Vanderbilt scored 13 points in the first quarter.
Good.
So in the
Lord.
entire tenure of Nick Saban, they allowed 13 points to Vanderbilt. In the last 20 seasons, no quarterback has more wins as a 20-plus point underdog than Diego Pavia. He had 2 at New Mexico State, including, I think, a thrashing of Auburn at Auburn last year or the year before,
Yes.
and this one. So, I mean, I asked this, like, how many quarterbacks right now can say they've beaten Auburn and Alabama? Probably none. Maybe Carson Beck? No, because he didn't beat Alabama, right?
Yeah,
How many quarterbacks have beaten,
That are
current
active.
quarterbacks have beaten Alabama and Auburn? And heck, you could even go back and say how many previous quarterbacks have beaten Alabama and Auburn. That probably list is not as long as you think,
Yeah, it's probably Stetson.
to be
Johnny
honest.
Manziel.
Because again, remember, you have to beat both of them. So that's incredible for Pavia. It kind of shows the type of player he is, because he's not going to light up your stat sheets. He's not going to light up any combine sheets, but he's just going to go out there and win, right? By God, he's going to win. Another thing I thought that was kind of funny, I don't know if you saw this, when they were storming the field and they're trying to rip the goalposts down, someone who was in charge of like the Jumbotron played an actual clip from Nick
Yes.
Saban talking, and this is from, I don't know, however long ago, but he was like, yeah, every venue in the SEC is so tough to play in except for Vanderbilt.
That was
Yeah, I
was
saw
literally
that.
the week before, I think.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that was like the preview. McAfee was sitting down with him because it was the preview for game day, like the day before, and he was like, "Yeah," because that was the Alabama Georgia game day.
Oh, was it really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see, because what makes it more amazing is not the fact that, we've read all these statistics about Vanderbilt and Bama. It's just for our pretty much entire existence, and for the entire existence for many other people, Vanderbilt has not just been bad, they've been horrendous.
Right, yeah.
Like a good year for Vanderbilt has been winning one SEC game.
When
Right?
they
Like
had Jay
it's
Cutler.
Yeah, they had Jay Cutler. They weren't too bad. James Franklin, I think, was his coach at,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they were, getting to a bowl game or two, which is remarkable for them. But literally, I mean, this reminded me of, if you remember this, boy, when Stanford beat USC when Jim Harbaugh was the coach there, and that was technically by point spread a bigger upset, because I think that was like a 40-point thing, because that USC team was one of those Pete Carroll loaded teams, right, with pros all over the place, and Stanford with a bunch of accountants and website designers beat the vaunted Trojans. So this reminded me of that. Yes, I know it's a little different because Nick Saban's not there. If you were to beat Nick Saban, it's different, but it still was so remarkable to see it, and it was. Watch them tear down the goalpost. I was like, tear those sons of bitches down. I don't care what fine you get. This is probably never going to happen again in any of these people's lifetime.
I think it was only $100 grand for that.
Yeah, yep.
But they
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it. But they took the goalpost and put it into the river. By
Yes,
the way,
they did.
you know how far they traveled?
I think it's like 2.5 miles.
Yeah, it's 2.5 miles. It
Yes,
took them just under an hour, and they had to go through downtown Nashville on Broadway.
Yes, it was awesome. What was also cool though is the fire department fished the goalposts out, and they cut it up, and they're auctioning off pieces of the
To pay the
goalposts.
fine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could buy like a whatever how many inch segment for X amount of money, and I think they sold out like almost immediately.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it's amazing. Again, the only comparison I have is that Stanford USC. Like, even as bad as like UVA football has been, and some other schools have been.
Was that USC team?
They
number
haven't
one?
been that bad. Probably. If they weren't, they were like they were top 5.
But it's almost like that game introduced us to Harbaugh as a coach, and Stanford.
Yes, it
Stanford
did.
after that, I think, got as high as like number 2 in the nation. Like,
Well, I mean, not that year. Obviously,
not
years
that
later.
year, but like in the years
Yeah, like
later,
the Toby Gerhardt,
and Andrew Luck
and McCaffrey came after that. But yeah, but that all started. You're right, with that win over USC. That was the starting off point. And so this could be a Clark Lee. Is that his name? The head coach of Vanderbilt, LEA. This could be the starting off point for us to see what they do. Right, it's pretty amazing.
Clark Lee.
With as many upsets as there were over the weekend, this one stood out the most to me because it just seems so improbable, regardless of who the coaches are of those two teams. It just to hear the sentence Vanderbilt beat Alabama is mind-boggling. It's like your thoughts are trapped in a bottle. Like it's crazy. Anything else about this game stood out to you?
It's just it's the landscape of college football, right? Alabama, we're looking at them going, wow, they just beat Georgia, and at one point they were up 28-0 on Georgia, right? They're gonna wax Vanderbilt. Like, why am I even tuning into this game? Like, that game's on, but why? Like, that's a 40-point win. You move on, but it's college football, and anything can happen. And what I love too now is that you're gonna go through the other upsets that happen, but just like the landscape of college football, the NIL spreading talent around, the coaches leaving and coming in and everything, like everyone is beatable.
Yes.
Right? There's not one team you can look at and go, okay, they're clearly the best and no one's touching them. It's not like LSU in 2019 or Bama the next year or Georgia in 21. Like every single team is beatable. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You brought up the NIL thing, and I think that as much as that's been a cluster for a lot of different reasons and things, I think without that, you don't see a Diego Pavia at a Vanderbilt, right? No. Because it's pretty much like, hey, even Vanderbilt, again, a school that has no football success, still has enough money to be like, hey, we'll give you something, which is better than what you're making at New Mexico State. And he thought Jerry Kill, his former New Mexico State coach, went over there and is like an offensive advisor to Clark Lee. So that helps too.
Lee, was he at New Mexico? Because I think he followed him too. He was supposed to go. I heard he was supposed to go to Nevada, and then Lee called him up and was like, "No, like come here and we'll get you the starting job at Vandy."
Yeah, so I mean it's possible, but yeah, I mean it just really cool. And what I also liked about this weekend, as we kind of move into the other college football stuff, is when you're sitting there looking at the slate for the week, and you looked at it and you said, there's really not many good games. Like, these should all be this. Where's the ranked matchups? Georgia's not playing. All these teams have bye. I remember sitting there saying to people when we were looking at it, going, but these are the weeks that always wind up being the craziest, that something happens. And I was like, the other thing to take a look at how many of these teams play on the road. It's hard to win on the road.
Yes.
And that's what we saw with Bama losing at Vanderbilt. That's also what we saw when number 4 Tennessee fell to an unranked Arkansas team in Fayetteville. Arkansas 19-14. It's a number 4 ranked, so Bama was number 1. It's the first time ever that 2 SEC teams ranked in the top 5 lost to unranked teams on the same day.
Really?
So that's a historic 2 upsets. That's as crazy as that is.
What a stat. Where'd you dig that one up?
I believe the incomparable Chris Fowler said that in Reddit and probably tweeted or something. I know I heard him say it. Another couple upsets we had here. Minnesota, they upended number 11 USC 24-17 in Minnesota. They went for it on 4th and goal in the final minutes, and they were able to convert for the game-winning touchdown.
I was watching that, and I was going, how crazy is he? Just kick the field goal and go up 3. Just guarantee that you're like, make them drive the length of the field and have a college kicker try to kick a field goal. And they barely got it. And he
was clearly in.
He was, I mean.
His entire waist up is in the end zone.
But it ended up having to go to review.
I know. It's because what we really need is some sort of Hawkeye or VAR to track the spot of the ball, because you can't see it. The refs aren't like they want to make the call correct. They want to, say, oh, it looks like he's there, but you cannot see anything when you do a tush push. You can't, or whatever, brotherly shove, the Grady bunch, what UVA's is. Like, you cannot see a daggone thing unless someone clearly like falls forward and you can see them laying on the ground there. So that's the issue, is if it gets stacked up, I mean, I would tell my defenders, jump on it and someone just push them in the air and they can't tell where the ball is. Even though, again, the ball just has to break the front part of the line. So clearly he was in, right? If by that definition, but it's too hard to see. So if you have some sort of VAR or Hawkeye system in place that tracks the whereabouts of the ball relative to the line to gain, that could be like automatically ruled a touchdown. They could buzz to the officials to whistle and be like, oh, touchdown, right? Or they could just say, oh, we'll review it, and it'll take a second like that. So that's, I think, the next step is what they need to do for that, because that'll make every touchdown call essentially 100% accurate.
And first down.
First down would be harder because it's moving, but yes, they can do that in VAR now in soccer, where they can look at offsides. It's essentially the same thing as where is the placement of the ball relative to the defenders, and they pause it and they can see that perfect line. That I don't understand why they haven't had any. There's no rumblings about it as far as I'm concerned. There really hasn't been true discussion about it, and that I don't understand because the technology is there. They're doing it in soccer. And it's not like there's multiple balls in play at once. Yes, you swap them out, but they swap them out in soccer too. So you just have to have every ball essentially tagged and used for the same purpose, and you have the technology.
If there was something I think that like could be pirated for this purpose, I'd imagine like if rugby has something like that to determine if it was like a forward like pass or not. I'd imagine if rugby had something like that, it would be a lot more easier to like
Translated
rip off. Yeah, translate's probably a nicer way to put it.
So as far as I know, I have never seen anything rugby wise or even Australian rules football, but Australian rules football doesn't have any offsides or anything like that. That's just kind of like, free for all, throw the ball down, let's go, hit whatever moves and kick whatever you can kick. But I wonder if the possibility for the reason why it has been developed is the oblong shape of the football. Whereas a soccer ball, regardless of which way it's facing, right, is always going to be in the same spherical shape. It's never going to be compressed or different. Whereas with the football, it's always in a different position because of the way it's shaped. I wonder if that has something to do with it. Like a tennis ball, right, that they can, in tennis, it's that round. It's always that same shape. So I wonder if that's a difficulty. But
that soccer, in fact, has something in the ball, though.
I don't know. I don't know how they do VAR.
I don't think they do. I think they just have because for soccer, for goals for soccer, it's the same thing as like hockey. Like it has to fully cross over, so you have to be able to see daylight in between ball and goal line. So that like Hawkeye view would determine it. Like,
but when they do that Hawkeye view in soccer, right, it's like an animated thing. So it's not like the actual photograph they're looking at. They're looking at like a computer generated.
Like a people pleaser though. Like I wonder if they did like focus groups and they were like, people are going to be like way more likely to believe us if we have like a CGI image, because it's like tennis too. Tennis does that.
I think that's the technology though. Like you can't track it. Like I think maybe it's looking at the impact of the ground. So there's nothing in the ball, but there's something on the ground or on the goalpost that is looking at it. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but there's something that they're tracking it, right? There's something that's registering. It's not just let's look at a picture, which is what essentially instant replay is. That's how VAR is different, that it's not an instant replay. It's a generating an image based off of some technology, not just let's just take a picture.
Yeah, I'm looking into this now.
Yeah, I really think that's got to be the next step. I'm not so sure why it's not clamored for more. Maybe it's because of the fact that the average American football fan has never watched a single second of soccer and has no idea this exists, or tennis, and they have no idea these things exist.
Here's a different way to think of it or look at it, and why it might be harder to do for football is I don't think, and I'm just going to go out on a limb, I don't think any other sport puts something in the ball. But I think the reason that it's probably harder for football is because you have just a swarm of 22 dudes around the football. So, like, regardless of where the camera is, it's going to be difficult to get a visual of it.
Yeah, so what I'm looking
Whereas,
at...
like, with soccer, it's like maybe one or two people in the way. Hockey, same thing. Like, I think just football is probably just a lot more difficult just because of the chaos.
There's not a chip in any of these things. Hawkeye is basically taking a series of cameras and producing a 3D image, and that's how it's working. It says it has a margin of error of 2 to 3 millimeters.
It's pretty good.
That's really good. My drone is 2 to 3 centimeters in the camera. But that uses a GPS system, high-powered GPS. So this is actually more accurate than that. Just using, I'd love to know what the cameras are.
But I mean that's
software is.
There's when you say that, the amount of cameras that are in play at a football game is asinine, right? You would think
there's no reason why you can't have that set up at each goal line.
Like each goal line, yeah. Even if you just want, you don't want to go at first, just at the goal lines.
They have one free floating camera on pulleys and cables. Like, why can't we? Yeah, free floating is not right, but like we have a pulley and cable camera. We can't get it.
No, I agree. Like, if you just put it at the goal lines, because first downs, whatever, okay, we can bicker about that all we want, but a touchdown is, you're right, it's the ultimate, right? That is the decider of games, right? How many games are decided by a touchdown or less? It's like an absurd number of them. So being able to be that accurate and know that he scored, but also like maybe it gives other teams more, it increases scoring, because instead of this guy getting ruled that he's short 3 times in a row, when he got in the first time, Well, that's 2 plays and 2 minutes off the clock that didn't have to happen, and now the other team gets the ball, right? There's probably a bigger trickle-down effect to this as well to get those calls immediately correct. Because again, it's nothing against the officials. They can't see it. So like if you can't see something, you can't just rule it. Like say, yeah, I got a hunch it happened. No, and they would say when in doubt, don't do anything and let the officials, the replay people in the booth do something because they can
the
replay it.
And the NFL could definitely do this. Like for soccer, the cost of installing their camera-based system in Premier League stadiums are around €250,000. It can be done.
What's that Canadian?
So,
what's it in Australian?
Yeah, I asked my like AI chat bot why is the review process for American football so far behind other sports? And I'm not going to read point for point, but it breaks it down into 9 different like explanations. I'll read you the headlines. 1, complexity of the game. 2, inconsistent standards for reviewable plays. 3, pace of the game. 4, technology adoption. 5, more people involved in the process. Multiple officials and off-field review centers. 6, subjectivity of certain rules. Time management and flow of the game. Fan and media scrutiny and resistance to change.
So look, this is why I don't trust technology. Like some of those things are flawed, right? Because it's looking at that broad statement, and some of those like subjectivity, that's a pass interference call, right? When we're talking about ball crossing the goal line, there's nothing subjective about that. Like an
scoring plays though.
Offside in soccer, there's nothing subjective. Like you pause it and it's clear you're offside or you're not. When you score a touchdown, that ball crossed the plane or it didn't. There's nothing subjective. It is purely, it's like a safe out call in baseball. It's not a strike call where that umpire has some level of subjectivity as to how they interpret the strike zone, which is now being kind of fixed. The umpires now are more accurate than ever. That is more of like what the pass interference calls are, and a lot of other calls, like you could even a holding is subjective, right?
So
but scoring a touchdown is completely objective. There's no wiggle.
Yeah. So when it cites subjectivity of certain rules, they cite specifically football has many rules that are subject to interpretation, like the controversial "what is a catch" rule.
Yes.
When a review involves these type of plays, officials must consider multiple factors, such as but not limited to possession, control, whether or not the ball moves, etc., making it harder to arrive at a quick and clear resolution.
Yeah, but this is why we're saying just put this sort of Hawkeye VAR technology only on the goal line to determine if the ball crosses the plane or not. Everything else can stay replay review because of those factors that are like mitigating. Like you can't, it inhibits the official's ability to basically be consistent across the board because, like you said, of all those other factors. But again, there's no subjectivity to a ball crossing the goal line. Now, if you're going to say, did he make the catch in the back of the end zone, that's different. But on those pushes, on anything on a goal line dive, any of those things, I actually think some coaches don't call it because they don't think it'll be ruled a touchdown. Not that they don't think that guy has gained the yard to get. They're afraid of, will this be ruled a touchdown even if he scores? So they call certain plays so that they're in space and that you can see it, right? And to me, that almost kind of compromises the integrity of the game because now you're doing things for essentially ulterior motives that don't fit the realm of competition, right? You're trying to base something off of what you think an official is going to do, right? As opposed to, this play will get me X yards guaranteed, I'm going to run it.
Well, right? That goes back to like what we were talking about last week with Tech Miami, where we said, if you don't call it a touchdown, who knows if it gets reviewed or not?
Correct.
You know what I mean? So like there is a lot of subjectivity in football. And I think I hope that behind closed doors they're making strides to fix that, especially with the amount of money that's being gambled on football every week.
They say
it's criminal if they're not.
They've said it for years that they want to make it so every call is accurate, but until you change the way the things are written and you make things more concrete, or you get rid of certain penalties or certain rules, there's too many things in football that are just going to be too hard to nail down, right? So I don't know. They'll always say it because it sounds good to the fans.
Stevie,
but
how do you fix it?
How do you fix those goal line plays?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have this Hawkeye technology. It's not difficult. I mean, Nick was right with the tush push. With like the amount of people that are running that now, I mean, it's every team is running that tush push, and it's just a mass of bodies. And like that Minnesota game when he scored, yeah, Nick, you're saying it's obvious, but you can't see the ball.
No.
And they didn't call it a touchdown.
And I actually think he scored on the play before, by the way. Yeah, if they had this technology, I'm pretty sure he crossed that line the play before.
That's where I was going. I don't like Nick said with like coaches saying you don't want to call it. That's why I was saying kick the field goal because I'm not leaving it up to the refs.
Yeah.
So you have to have a Hawkeye level of technology to, I mean, just get every call right. It's not
every call right that you can get right. That is objective.
There's definitely if every other major sport can do this, like
why
college
can't
football can do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. They have the money to put these at every single stadium, or at least every Power 4 stadium.
But it's our money.
Yeah. Yeah, the NCAA. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But moving on to some more upsets because we weren't done. There was still a lot more. Sticking in the Big Ten, classic Big Ten matchup here. Washington over Michigan, number 10 ranked Wolverines in Seattle. The Huskies downed Michigan 27-17. Thanks to 271 yards passing from Washington quarterback Will Rogers, who I think is a Mississippi State transfer,
correct.
If I'm correct. Sticking again, some top 10 upsets. Texas A&M, who was ranked, I believe, 24 in the country.
I think they were
25, 24, 25, something like that.
24,
They just dismantled number 9 Missouri 41-10. That game was over before it started. The Aggies have now won 5 straight games after they lost their opener to Notre Dame, and they now sit atop the SEC standings all by themselves at 3-0 in the league, which is pretty amazing. So when all was said and done in the college football weekend, 5 of the top 11 teams lost on the same day. Right, this is the first time that many teams in the top 11 have lost on the same day since 2016, and it actually should have been 6 because the Miami-Cal game was absurd, even though I tried to stay up. I got to like about 1:15, and I couldn't do it. But that game was nuts. Miami was down 35-10, looking like just a shell of a team. And at one point in the fourth quarter, they were down 38-18. But somehow Cam Ward rallied the Hurricanes. They went on to win 39-38 on the road in Berkeley. Cam Ward threw the game-winning touchdown pass to Elijah Arroyo with 26 seconds left to give them that pretty good win, because Cal's not bad. Like I said it before, not like they're like a really great team, but they're a decent bowl level squad.
I mean, that's 2 weeks. Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row that Miami escaped games they probably should have lost to good teams. I wouldn't call either of those teams great. I wouldn't call Virginia Tech great, and I wouldn't call Cal great, but they're good. And like Miami's playing with fire with some of those, but it would be like Miami to get up for a big game, right? And go work like Clemson or someone or FSU or whoever it is, just something big.
Yes.
And then lay an egg to one of those teams, and they should have lost. But there was a lot of ACC Twitter. Really, the conspiracy theorists are definitely coming out.
Because wasn't there a controversial review in that game?
There was a targeting call that, honestly, I kept looking at it, I'm like, this is the definition of targeting, how they not call it. It would have given Cal a first down and ended the game, essentially.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's why it was such a big deal. But I have no sympathy for you because you blew a 35-10 lead.
Yes.
I can't look at one play and say, oh, you like that's why you lost. Like,
don't put yourself in that position in the first place.
Correct. You can't blow a 35 or what'd you say, 38-18 in the fourth quarter at one point?
Yes, 38-18.
That's inexcusable. I don't care what the refs do.
Yeah, I agree. Sticking in the ACC, because again, that was an ACC matchup, Cal. And
the All Coast Conference, by the way.
Yes, there we go. UVA, they scored 24 unanswered points, including 18 in the fourth quarter to beat Boston College 24-14. That's a pretty good win for that team. Also, Syracuse.
By the way, with your Cavaliers, Sanker, we talked
Wahoos.
about him okay, I said Cavaliers, but sure, Wahoos.
That's not what they go by. just saying, you'll never hear that term ever uttered on that.
Professor,
at that school.
It's not the hippocampus; it's the hippogrounds.
Yeah. Jabroni.
Anyway, our guy
lost a lot of good men out there.
Yeah, our guy Sanker that we mentioned in the ACC preview of how he was making all these tackles, and it was because their defense was bad last year, and that's why he made so many tackles. Man, put on the tape of him now with a good defense, or at least decent defense. He is flying around. He's the one that had the scoop and score.
Mm-hmm.
That dude can flat out play.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched UVA, because why would you? Turn
Agreed.
on. I mean, they're 4-1 now and sitting undefeated right now in the ACC, which is ridiculous. But this is also how they had to start in order to get bowl eligible. The second half of their season is pretty rough.
Yes, he went through that. Laughably went through the rest of the games.
But
okay,
Sanker's worth watching.
He's a good player.
The real deal.
Yep. Staying in the ACC, Syracuse, they went out to Vegas to play the number 25 ranked UNLV, not UNILV.
Got him.
Yep. Then Syracuse, the Orange beat them in overtime. The Fighting Guy Fieri's, they beat them on LaQuint Allen's rushing touchdown, 44-41. Allen had 129 all-purpose yards and 4 touchdowns in Syracuse's win. Yes, the Fighting Guy Fieri's.
Stop.
That's where.
Do
that's
we
where
need to say that name on this show?
Why
I thought
not?
we were friends. Don't give me. This is.
You don't want to go to
Flavor
Flavortown? You don't want to go to Flavortown?
This is a sports-related podcast, and I don't want to bring my feelings about the TGI Fridays chef into it.
I guess. Fair enough. One last ACC bit of news. Pitt, they took out UNC to improve to 5-0. It's the first time Pitt's been 5-0 for the first time since 1991. They really shouldn't be 5-0 because some other team with the same colors went and just botched a game a few weeks ago. I forget who that was.
No idea.
No idea who could that have been. The Penn State Nittany Lions, they handled the UCLA Bruins in another classic Big Ten matchup in Happy Valley to move to 5-0. The Penn State Nittany Lions are the only FBS team to start 5-0 in each of the past 5 seasons, which I think is incredible. A pretty remarkable stat. But again, we brought this up during our preview. We'll believe it when we see it, right? This is so Penn State. Again, 5-0 the last 5 years. Everyone else in the country can't do that. But yet you've never made it to a playoff. Have they even made it to a Big Ten championship in that time frame? I don't even know if they.
I don't know
if they have.
They're not, because they're not in the Big Ten West.
They weren't. Yes, I know, but still, their inability to win the big game, right? The big game means you got to beat at least one or both of Ohio State and Michigan.
Looking at their schedule, you have to beat right now. You have 2 big games. You have at USC and versus Ohio State.
And USC is not that good, right? They should have lost to Wisconsin at home, and Wisconsin's just terrible. Bailed them out, and they just lost to Minnesota.
Yes, Penn State's a much better team and a much better coach.
But they're going on the road.
But they're on the road, and it's across the country.
Last time Penn State was in a Big Ten championship game was 2016 when they beat the Badgers.
Yep,
so that's over 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was Trace McSorley versus TJ
Sorry about your Badgers, Nick.
Badges.
I remember watching that game at the apartment in Richmond.
Oh, the apartment.
I remember watching that game because
was Nick just going crazy?
I think we went out to dinner, and it was like Wisconsin was beating the hell out of them.
I don't know if I was living there at the time.
Yes, you were.
Was I?
Yes, you were. Because we came
2016.
Back.
You would have been. I was in Colorado at that point.
We came back to the apartment and finished watching it, and all of a sudden, Trace McSorley from Ashburn, Virginia. Trace McSorley.
Yeah.
From downtown Brambleton.
Oh God! Don't even. I completely forgot about
town
that.
now.
No, that was the
their announcer at the games.
Their announcer would call every time in the game. He'd be like, "And that's a first down in downtown Brambleton," or whatever he would say. You're like, "Welcome to downtown Brambleton." Like that's
this made up area.
Yeah.
Ugh. But hold on, wait, real quick. Did Nick have a meltdown with his Badgers? We talked last week. He's a closeted Wisconsin fan.
No, I wouldn't have had a meltdown.
No, he didn't have a meltdown. But
no, why would I have a meltdown?
Right. He's sneaky. He's a sneaky Wisconsin
we
fan.
both are. Yeah. But
Badgers, Brewers, cheese.
I think I remember
just cheese.
Yeah.
Just cheese.
Have you ever had a Culver's meal?
I have not. I did see though that Bucky the Badger, the mascot, had his birthday this weekend, and the Culver's mascot was there to celebrate with him.
It's awesome.
It was pretty awesome.
Only you would know how Bucky the Badger celebrated his birthday.
I believe 84, I think, was what he turned. My son recognizes Bucky the Badger on the shirt I have. He goes, Bucky, Bucky.
I'm sure he does.
He sees it on the shirt. So
got it hanging up all over your house, probably.
No. If only my interior decorator would allow such a thing. Last bit of college football stuff. The U.S. Naval Academy and the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, each of them had blowout wins over the weekend. Navy's win was a demolishing of Air Force, I think at Air Force as well. Both academies are now 5-0 on the year. It's the first time both Navy and Army are 5-0 since 1945. And that was the Navy's largest win over Air Force since 1978. So pretty good stuff happening there.
My boys, anchors away.
Both of them have to play Notre Dame.
That's all I know.
At neutral sites.
Well, yeah, because Notre Dame would never allow that.
Of course.
Because they would never go on the road. And to show good,
small of a venue to go to West.
Oh yeah, and to show good graces, they'll say we'll play at a neutral site. So Army plays at Yankee Stadium, I believe.
Yes, they do.
I don't know where Navy plays them. Probably in Philly or something like Baltimore.
They usually end up going. I think they usually end up having a game in Philly. I think that's usually some big. I'll look it up.
The Army Navy game has been in Philly a lot recently, so I wonder if that.
I think it was in Foxborough last year, right?
Yes, it was. It was the most. It was the most attended, one of the most attended events ever in Gillette Stadium history, or something crazy. Yeah, it's
at dude. It's at MetLife Stadium this year.
Okay, the Giants Stadium. Army Navy game or the
Navy, right?
Navy Notre Dame.
Navy Notre Dame's at MetLife, and then Army Notre Dame's at Yankee Stadium.
Correct.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But by the way, you know how awesome that would be?
Go ahead.
You know how awesome it would be to be Army Navy as that game decides who gets into the playoff from the group of 5?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
That would be sweet.
They would have to if both teams. Well, because but that Army Navy game does not count as a conference matchup because it happens doesn't happen after the conference championship games.
So there's a way
So it wouldn't matter. It won't matter. It can't matter because that conference's championship game will have had to happen before. So there's a chance that they play each other 2 weeks in a row.
Correct.
They could play each other in the conference championship. And that game is the one that determines who would go. And the game the next week is just a game for pride.
Yeah.
So
I would like to see them.
That would be pretty cool, though.
If that was the collision course and it was for the championship, can we just do away with that championship and let's just play?
Dude, we should
for all the marbles there.
We should try to get tickets to Army Navy. Although it's a week before Christmas, but it's at the Commander Stadium.
That's what I thought it was this year.
We can't get those.
No, yeah, or maybe.
I might be able to.
You might be able to. Our friend Alyssa Kane might be able to as a Naval Academy graduate.
Dude, those games go so hard.
There's zero chance we could go. You might be able to.
My dad would tell you he won 3rd place at a chili cook-off tailgate one year. Ask me how many people entered.
3.
4.
Bronze medal.
Yes. Not last. We're not the worst.
Yeah.
We're not the worst.
But they play at they play at the Commanders Stadium this year, Ravens Stadium next year, and then MetLife the following, and then at the Link in 2027.
Okay, I
mean, they got this stuff mapped out.
Kind of have to. I think
it's a big deal. But right before Christmas too, a week before Christmas, that's huge.
Yeah, that's kind of late. I feel like
it's always 2 weeks after the season or something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Does your dad make a big deal out of Army-Navy football games?
Not as much. He does always. We have to watch it. And he's always rooting for Army, but he didn't go to West Point, so it's a little different. But he still is obviously rooting for Army. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
but
Papa Commodore does
jerseys.
The jerseys are the best.
Song and dance behind his.
Yes,
it's a big dude. He will invite people in off the he's a very much I think I've been to one Army-Navy football game in my lifetime with him, and every other year though it's always at the house in the lazy boy, chili on the stove, and it doesn't matter if the postman comes to the house with a package. You want to come in, grab a bowl, and watch some Army-Navy? No, sir, I'm working. He just wants anybody and everybody to see this. What? And hey, man, we should all. That's the kind of alum we should all be, right?
Yes,
that's the kind of alum we should all be. You show up for the rivalry games.
Isn't your father in the Naval Academy Hall of Fame?
The Athletic Hall of Fame, yeah. His I can't remember what year it was, but he played on one of the baseball teams that was the first team to make it to postseason in Naval Academy history or something like that.
Pretty sweet. Any other college football stuff before we move on?
No, it was a good. I thought it was a fun week.
Well, you wanted to throw out West Virginia demolishing Oklahoma State?
No,
is that what you wanted?
I was not going to do that.
Okay, well, it's already out there.
Didn't talk about it.
No, they actually have the Coal Rush game this weekend. Night game, new Coal Rush jerseys against Iowa State. By the way, that game's actually important for Big 12 stand-ins. So
pretend I don't know what a Coal Rush game is.
So basically, West Virginia created these Coal Rush jerseys to honor the miners of West Virginia. And so it's the color of the actual coal in West Virginia, because they've had gray jerseys before, but this is actually coal black. And then the stripes they put on there are actually supposed to mimic the reflectors. You pulling them up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're supposed to mimic the reflectors on the safety vests, and they actually took a picture of a wall of coal. And the stripe, you can see it on the stripe of the helmet. The picture of the wall of coal they put on that stripe. So all of that's actually just a real photo. It's
cool.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, those are
so
sweet.
it's a night, because they needed a night game to do it. So it's a night game. Everyone wears black. Playing number 11 to Iowa State. But I wasn't actually really going to mention that. What I was going to mention was the slate for this weekend is insane. So if you're cancel all your Saturday plans at 3:30, that's when basically all the great matchups start. Go to your local bar, set up shop in your TV, get multiple TVs, do whatever you need to do. I mean, you don't want to miss from 3:30 on to midnight.
When you say the slate, I always have to try and figure out what you're talking about.
Clean.
I don't know if you're talking about a piece of rock or the metaphorical slate. So I always have to
D, it's metaphorical. God damn it!
I try to really when you say the slate, I always have to really lock in and be all right, what's he talking about here?
I'll just go through a little bit of matchups. So 3:30, we have the Red River rivalry. That's Texas and Oklahoma. Ooh. Always played in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Then watch out for the ghost of Toby Keith is going to avenge something here.
Yeah, that is always. I feel like that's always a one-score game, right? No matter who's on what team, that game always tends to come down to the last second. Then Penn State at USC at 3:30. Cal at Pitt, which is important for the ACC. Louisville at UVA is at 3:30. Another important game for the ACC, surprisingly. Keep going to Arizona at BYU. Oregon, Ohio State. That's the big one, I would say, at 7:30.
That's game day.
That's game day. That's 2 versus 3. Ole Miss at LSU. That's 9 versus 13. Then Iowa State, West Virginia, and then we have Kansas State at Colorado at 10:15.
That's a good
and then if you
game,
want
too.
to stay up and watch Ashton Gianti at Boise State, they play at Hawaii.
Oh, sweet! Is that televised though?
That is on CBS Sports Network.
Awesome.
At 11 p.m., the Hawaii game, where we'll see if Gianti runs for another.
The chalkboard for next weekend looks really good.
Yeah, that slate. We're gonna wipe it.
Yeah, the chalkboard.
Yep. All right, that's going to do it for our top cash. We're going to move on to our discussion on the Major League Baseball playoffs. But before we get into that, as always, if we're talking about baseball on the show, we are talking about Bobo's Fine Chicken in Virginia Beach. Visit them on Shore Drive near Chicks Beach Monday through Saturday for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Grab yourself some on the way to the beach or to a ball game, whatever it is, whether it is baseball or some other sport, because now we're getting towards the end of baseball. We know hockey's starting up. We got a hockey team down in Norfolk. Take that on your way to their games. But whatever you do, grab some when you have a chance. Grab a nice cold beverage at Bo's place. And just remember, Bobo's in baseball, there ain't nothing better. So we are in the midst of the MLB playoffs. We're in the divisional rounds. So basically the last 8 remaining teams in all of Major League Baseball, 4 from each league, right? The American League and the National League. But I want to start off talking about the Mets. OMG, the Mets. Like, they have been crazy. This year's been crazy for them, right? They started off freaking horrendous. They started off typical Mets. Like, here's the first pitch and the season is over is kind of how they started, right? Especially with, like, Kodai Senga not even pitching this year, getting hurt before it started. Just had that feel of, here we go again. It's the Mets, right? But, man, they've been the best team in baseball since, like, May, I think. Right? That's, I believe is when they started turning it around. But their playoff games... Yes, record-wise, I believe the best. Okay. They were, I think, 22-33 is what they were.
Okay. And turn it around.
Just turned it around. Remarkably, right? And I guess in typical 2024 Mets fashion, their playoff games have been remarkable. They've been nuts. So first one I want to start off was on Thursday. They were in a winner-take-all Game 3 of the wild card round against the Brewers in Milwaukee, as the Milwaukee was the higher seed. And so during that game, the Brewers' Jake Bauers hit a go-ahead pinch hit home run in the bottom of the 7th, which that's one of my favorite things is a pinch hit home run because it's so hard to pinch hit. And the fact that he took someone deep, did that in the 7th. I think it was off of Jose Buto or one of the Mets' really good relievers. The next pitch, Sal Frelick, Paisan, gets up there and smacks another homer, just crushes it. He had 2 homers the whole year in the regular season. And so that put Milwaukee up 2-0. But then in the top of the 9th, this is one of the best home runs I think I've ever seen in my life. The Pete Alonso home run. He gets up 2 men on, facing Devin Williams, one of the best relief pitchers in the entire world, with one of the most devastating pitches, his changeup. He could literally throw it to you every time and tell you it's coming. You would swing and miss, right? But Alonso gets up in the top of the 9th, down 2-0, and he hits an opposite field home run off of the aforementioned changeup to put the Mets up 3-2, and they would go on to win that game and advance to the divisional series to play. I think they won the game 4-2, and they went on to play Philly in the divisional round. But what's other crazy things about that, Alonso hadn't hit a home run in his last 49 at-bats. Right? This is one of the most prolific power hitters in the league. He's in that big of a bog right there. He's the first player ever to hit a go-ahead homer while his team is trailing in the 9th inning or later of a winner-take-all postseason game. Ever in the history. It's a loaded stat, right? But it's wild. When you hear it and break it down, you go, really? No one else has ever done that? Yeah, Pete Alonso just did that. With that, again, to hit an opposite field home run is remarkable, regardless of who you are, what league you're playing in. It's really difficult to do, right? To do it against one of the best pitchers in the league, in the world, and do it against one of the hardest pitches to hit, his changeup in the world, is just silly. the fact that he did that. So that was pretty crazy to watch that happen. And then we go on to the divisional round. Like I said, the Mets advanced to play the Phillies, which is kind of cool. We get that kind of, divisional rivalry there. Mm-hmm. The New York Philly going against it. But in game one, the Mets scored 5 runs in the 8th inning to beat Philly 6-2. So they were down in that 8th inning. So they took game one. Then in game two, things got crazy again. Philly was down 3-0 in the 6th inning, and Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos went back-to-back to tie the game at 3. Then the top of the 7th, so the very next half inning, Brandon Nimmo hit a go-ahead home run to put New York up 4-3. Then we go to the bottom of the 8th, so just an inning later. Philadelphia's Bryson Stott hit a go-ahead 2-run triple and later scored on JT Realmuto's fielder's choice to put Philadelphia up 6-4. But then we're not done, right? In the 9th inning, Mark Vientos of the Mets hit a game-tying 2-run homer, which was his second home run of the game, by the way, to knot those teams up at 6-6. And again, we're not done because then in the bottom of that frame, Castellanos comes up again and hits a walk-off single for a 7-6 Philadelphia victory to even the series at 1-1. So that game was just as nuts as the Pete Alonso game, right? So crazy. Sticking in the National League, I think the National League games have been better.
Hold on, real quick. Before we move on from the Mets, did you see that SI article that came out about, like, people should put their money on the Mets to go to the World Series?
SI does AI-generated articles now. Seriously, they do. They laid off all their writers and said, we'll just AI generate this.
It's beside the point.
So I don't know. I wouldn't. Pinko commie rag.
Jesus Christ. This is a magazine that you had hanging up in your basement, by the way.
The Boca Breeze? What?
The article was saying that people should put their money on the New York Mets to go to the World Series because the Brewers have made the postseason 8 times prior to 2024, and every team that knocked them out went on to appear in the World Series.
Not bad.
Isn't that kind of crazy that, like, the road to the World Series is through Milwaukee?
Oh, it's because all that beer and cheese.
Love that cheese.
They get their fill of it. They get a little buzz going, and they're good to go.
That's amazing. But hey, with the Pete Alonso, though, he had another Oppo taco tonight. Tech shot, by the way.
He had another opposite field home run last game too, or in game 1 or game 2.
But
part of postseason success is getting hot at the right time. Look at Pete go.
He hadn't hit an opposite field home run in God knows when too. They were talking about that, like he hadn't hit one in such a long time.
But I kind of want to talk about him a little bit because he's such a liability in the field. Why is he not DHing?
Because he's not
is it one of those players that he's got to be locked in? Like he's got to play the field to lock in at the plate?
Look, yeah. So as you may or may not know, boy, DHing is not as easy as it looks because your timing and rhythm, your circadian rhythm is all off, right? So unless you are
really below average, he's not an MLB level fielder. He's just not.
But again, so you're going to DH him, then who's going to play first base?
There's got to be someone that can play first. I don't on that.
JD Martinez, the other DH, who's even more of a liability, who can't play first base. You can get Brett Beatty, who bats 100 to play first base.
First base,
roster construction
not
doesn't
that hard.
have it. What I'm saying is it's incredibly hard. What I'm saying is that they should have constructed their roster to have an actual first baseman. But Pete Alonso might be one of those guys that he has to stay in the field to lock in at the plate because, like you said, DHing is really difficult and it's hard. And you can get, like, I know you've done it before where it's difficult to just sit in the dugout cold and then come in and hit.
Yeah, essentially you're pinch hitting unless you have you have to have a whole routine. Like Schwarber has a routine,
he's in the cage,
right? And it works for him. If you don't have that, you can't just say, I'm a hitter. Like it just doesn't work that way. It's
Alonso
too difficult.
If he didn't hit that home run against Milwaukee, I mean, he made a horrific error the inning before. And
he dropped the pop up. Yeah,
it was like, what are we doing?
I've been there before in a pop up too. That it's got some weird spin on it and that angle.
Back to the field.
Yeah, it looks weird.
Back to the field. But I don't know. I just wanted to mention that because it could be a factor in these games.
I don't think he's that bad. He's improved his
World
defense.
Series, maybe?
He's obviously not a stellar fielder, but he's not like, I wouldn't say you have to get his ass out of there, right?
He's Giambi.
Giambi was a bad fielder, and he didn't DH till he was like 40 years old. And he played his whole career in the National League, right? He only played for the Rockies the last like year or two. He essentially was a player coach for them. So no, I don't think there has to be a move there. I don't think that.
No, I'm not saying to move. I just
something to look for.
It just feels like it's just something to look for that his defense could cost him in these games, because I'm sure like you're going to go through the other teams. There's one team that's defensively unbelievable, and it's Cleveland.
Yeah,
and you need defense wins championships.
Yeah. Speaking of that Cleveland-Detroit series, another intra-divisional matchup, and two teams, not just Cleveland, but Detroit, I think, plays some decent defense since they got Javi Baez's butt out of there. I think Trey Sweeney is who took over at shortstop, and he's been very good. But in that series, the Guardians scored 5 runs in the first inning of Game 1 to take that game against Detroit 7-0. But then in Game 2, Kerry Carpenter, who I think batted 284 on the season that we discussed last week.
18 home runs or whatever.
Yeah, he broke a 0-0 tie in the 9th inning with a 3-run home run off of Emmanuel Clase, who had, I think, a .5 or .6 ERA this entire year, as Detroit went on to win 3-0 to even that series at 1-1. Sticking in the AL, you had the Yankees beat the Royals 6-5 in Game 1 of their division playoff round. That game featured an MLB postseason record 5 different lead changes. It was a pretty wild game. Wasn't necessarily like the cleanest game, but from an entertainment standpoint, it was fun to watch. I think Verdugo wound up getting the eventual winning RBI knock, which was good for him because he's struggled mightily this last like 3 quarters of the year. But then in Game 2, Kansas City scored 4 runs in the 4th inning, including a home run from Salvador Perez to win that game 4-2 and even that series at a game apiece. And then back to the National League, our last divisional matchup is the Dodgers versus the Padres, another intra-divisional rivalry, which is pretty cool that we have all those going on as well. But in Game 1, Ohtani hit a 3-run homer as the Dodgers beat the Padres 7-5. And then in Game 2, San Diego hit a franchise postseason record 6 homers to win 10-2 and even that series at 1-1. And if you're following along, that means every series, all 4 series, are knotted at a game apiece, and it is the first time ever in Major League Baseball history that all 4 divisional series are tied at a game apiece after 2 games.
That Dodgers-Padres game has some real juice to it. It's got some real rivalry. It's nice having some rivalries in this.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys see what the Padres? I don't even know what he is. I guess he's like the general manager of the Padres said about like the series swinging back to San Diego after all that mess that broke out.
Billy
last
Bean?
game. No, not Billy Bean.
Well, that's all I know.
Eric Grupner.
I hardly know her.
I'm gonna read the quote, and I want you guys to rate it out of 10 for me, okay? Our game is at its best when our players and fans give everything they have for their team and city while showing respect and sportsmanship towards players and fans of the opposing team. There is never an excuse for abusive speech or behavior towards others at Petco Park. As we continue our push for a World Series championship, our team needs you now more than ever. Please continue to cheer for the Padres with all you have while showing class and good sportsmanship to those around you. Rated out of 10.
Soft as hell, 0.1.
But okay. I mean, it's required to say it.
Yes,
you're right.
You can't come out and say those Dodger fans are assholes. We gotta give it right back to them.
So if you remember, I told that story about how the Floyd of Rosedale Trophy, the Iowa-Minnesota thing happened, right? And that a lot of kind of got its ball rolling when the governor of Iowa made the remark of, if the officials stand for what happened, our fans surely won't. And they got all up in arms in the 30s, the 1930s about this, right? So people back then were even like, you can't do that. So fast forward, 80, 90 years, and it's still the same, right? You can't foment insurrection as much as people think you can.
So that was the statement, like I said, from Eric Grubner, who's like he's head of their front office, right? That's what I'll delegate him as. Here's the statement from Mike Schilt, the coach manager for the Padres. We're back to San Diego with a very, very loud, raucous, aggressive, hungry crowd that's going to be super excited and going to be getting after it.
Bring in the ruckus.
But I know also that we'll stay classy, San Diego.
Yes. 1,000 out of 1,000.
That's a 10 out of 10. That's a 10 out of 10.
If Will Ferrell doesn't show up to this game,
I am ready to run through a brick wall. Let's go. Let's go, Fathers.
Yeah, yes. That's the guy you want managing your bench right there.
Yes.
Love that.
I'm Brian Fantana. You're Brick.
I love land.
High pressure systems.
Compared to that of the Middle East.
Yes. You're not Ron. So, anything else baseball wise?
Yeah, I got a couple things. Real quick. By the way, Clase giving up that home run. Who was that to? That was to
Kerry Carpenter.
Kerry Carpenter, right? Clase had given up 5 earned runs all year.
Are you serious?
He gave up 3 on one swing. Yeah. 5 earned runs all year.
Postseason baseball.
Postseason baseball is wild. And then I wanted to give a shout out to a guy that we used to hate watching, AJ Przinsky.
Yeah.
And Adam Wainwright. They've been great in this Mets Phillies game broadcasting. It feels like when we would watch a game, like when you watch a baseball game, you're always looking at what pitches he's gonna throw. You're kind of looking at the situation and how's this pitcher going to attack this hitter and what's going to happen. All these different factors that go into it. They are breaking it down as a catcher and a pitcher would see it, and it's awesome.
Yes,
that's pretty sweet.
It is pretty. It's nice. It's a catcher and pitcher, right? It's certain guys are fun. And this, but when it comes down to it, those two players are controlling the whole game for the most part, right? They control the pitch that's thrown, where it's thrown, how it's thrown, when it's thrown, and that is the crux of the problem that has to be solved during a game is what pitch do I throw, and the hitters, how do I hit it, or do I hit it, right?
I mean,
so they're at the center of that.
At bats. It was awesome because Nola just punched out Alonso on 3 down and in painted fastballs. And they're like, oh, he's going there, but he's got to execute it. Alonso's just looking out over the plate. He spikes a curveball. He's like, Alonso saw that up. He immediately saw that out over the plate and swung, and he swung the ball in the dirt. And they're like, this ball's got to be here, it's got to be here, or it's got to be there. Like, it was so amazing to see, and the way they did it. Very educational. If you're watching the Phillies-Mets games, turn the sound up.
So Barstool did an article about, like, things that they've liked so far from the postseason and things that they haven't liked from the postseason. That was one of the things that they liked. So I'm glad you brought that up. But related, something...
You're going to say Bob Costas.
Yes. The Barstool, as well as like Kansas City fans, are just up in arms against big shot Hall of Famer Bob.
Why? What's wrong with Bob?
He's not,
because he doesn't give any love to people, or I shouldn't say it. People feel that he doesn't give any love to Kansas City in the series because he's a Long Island guy.
He just doesn't have that.
Give me
he doesn't
a break.
Have that.
So like when
plays happen.
When Stanton hit
Bob's.
When Stanton grounded into that double play in the last game.
Which one? I'm sure he's grounded into several.
I think it was like the 8th inning or the 9th inning.
Made that diving backhand to start the double play.
Which I guess like statistically, like that was rated like the second most important play of the game or something like that. And I guess like the way Bob reacted to it was more like had more of like a "oh come on Yankees" tone rather than like what a play by Bobby Witt Jr.
No, you know what this is? This is the typical anti-New York bias amongst all sports fans. Because if you're not actively against New York as an announcer like Joe Buck was, then they think you are actively rooting for New York. This
is what Bob Costas does. That's just his tone. The thing I don't like listening to him, because I honestly I think it's brutal listening to him calling these games. He doesn't stop talking, and it's constant like stories.
Like he's calling like he's calling doing it on the radio.
Like Collins.
Yes, and he's trying. It's almost like
now back on my day.
Yeah, and he's got to fill in every sort of
you talk about a guy.
All right, Collinsworth. You're right. It sometimes is like him calling on the radio. I don't mind that at all. That's a lot of what like Vince Scully sounded like, and Bob is coming from the era that idolized Vince Scully. So
correct, but
no, I don't have a problem with Bob. He's not the best, but Bob is really good at what he does.
Bob tackled the Olympics dealing with Russian pink eye and a shoddy teleprompter. I got nothing but love for Bob Costas. I want that on the record.
He should not be announcing playoff baseball.
There it is.
Well, who you want in his stead?
Jason Benetti.
Yeah, but he works for Fox.
Mike Piazza from Nintendo 64 MLB.
Mike Piazza lives in Italy.
Matt Vasgersian. Give me Matty V.
Vasgersian.
TBS. He's been on TBS.
TBS? Yeah.
I mean, it's MLB Network, TBS. I mean,
Hank
Fox
Azaria.
Those are the channels.
That's the correct answer.
Hank Azaria.
What's it? Brockmeyer. Jim Brockmeyer is who we need.
That ball
in the booth.
could not be buried in a Jewish cemetery because it was tattooed.
Yes, we need Brockmeyer in the booth. Let's be real. Ratings would be
through the roof, dude.
Any more baseball stuff before we move on to some NFL?
High as a crow. No, I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you. Moving on to some NFL stuff over the past week. On Thursday, Younghoe Koo of the Falcons hit a 52-yard field goal as time expired to force overtime against the Bucs, and Kirk D. Cousins hit Kadarrell Hodge for a game-winning 45-yard touchdown pass as Atlanta tops Tampa Bay 36-30. Captain Kirk had a franchise record 509 yards in that game to go along with 4 touchdowns, which is a pretty good fantasy week for those who had him. On Sunday morning, Aaron Rodgers threw 3 picks as the Vikings beat the Jets 23-17 in London. As Minnesota improved to 5-0 as a result of that game, the Jets fired head coach Robert Saleh, which is an interesting turn of events. Sticking with some interesting things, the Bengals, Joe Burrow, he threw for 5 touchdown passes and 392 yards, but the Bengals fell to Baltimore 41-38 in overtime. Justin Tucker, I hardly know her, hit a 56-yard field goal with 1:35 left to force the extra session, and then made the game-winning walk-off 24-yarder in OT. But that doesn't tell the whole story in overtime. In overtime, the Ravens had the ball, and Lamar Jackson fumbled a snap, just straight up hit him in the hands, missed it, and Cincinnati gets it. And then I believe the next play they turned the ball over or something like that. They gave it back real quick, and then Derrick Henry ran a 50-yard run, and they just punched the chip shot in. So that was just a wild, weird game. But Cincinnati's in trouble. I think they're 1-4. And
doesn't it feel like their Super Bowl window might be
done?
Well, to be honest, it's because when you put all this emphasis on securing major lucrative contracts for your wide receivers, you don't have success.
Yep.
And that's what those two teams.
San Francisco too.
Yeah, those 2 teams are mired in that. The holdouts, the drama, all that crap hurts your team. It's a purely selfish action, and understandably so, because you're securing, multi-millions and millions of dollars. But until something changes around the culture of how contracts go in extensions and all the things happen in the NFL, you're going to still see teams do this unless the teams make a concerted effort, like the Kansas City Chiefs, who, spoiler alert, have been the most successful team in essentially the last 5 to 10 years, because they don't do that crap because they realize this doesn't benefit us. It doesn't behoove us. Right. So until teams figure that out the same way the New England Patriots of Bill Belichick figured that out, you're going to see these teams like a Cincinnati, who has one of the greatest quarterbacks on earth. You're going to see them continue to struggle because of that crap, which wide receivers don't win you games. Spoiler alert. Running backs don't win you games. Spoiler alert. It's a team effort, and you have to fill that team with team players. And when you have one weak link in the chain, it impacts the other 53 guys on that roster. And until people realize that, you're going to see teams like Miami, who has the highest paid receiving core in the league, have one of the worst offenses in the league. And then you say, oh, well, Tua's hurt. If your receivers are that impactful and mean that much, it doesn't matter who's the quarterback. Just look at the freaking Vikings, who are 5-0 with Sam freaking Darnold as their quarterback, right? So I don't want to hear this crap of, oh, well, Tua's hurt, so that's why. No. You invested all this money in receivers. That receivers don't win you games, and that's why you're losing. So, no, until we see that change, you're going to see Cincinnati struggle. I think their window is closing. I think the 49ers window may have closed this year. I said it at the beginning of the year. I was not confident in them because you had Ayuk hold out and you had Trent Williams hold out, your best offensive lineman, and that hurts your team exponentially because, as Peyton Manning said, those reps in training camp matter a whole hell of a lot, and they missed out on all those things. So, no, I'm low on the 49ers. I'm low on the Bengals, and I'm low on any team that has people hold out. Any team that, like the Cowboys, that puts all their money in the receiver basket, you're not going to win. You don't win ball games that way. Doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you have to have bad receivers or you can't have good receivers, but it doesn't behoove your team to pay exorbitant amounts of money for wide receivers. It doesn't. It doesn't help you.
So while we're on that subject, I have a question that I want to pose to you guys. So, like, Jamar Chase, right, or Brandon Ayuk, pick whichever one you want. I don't really care. But when let's say, like, you have an Ayuk type who's holding out because it's whatever, it's the last year of his contract. He wants an extension. He wants more money because he thinks he's just a godsend and a just super freak that can carry a team to a championship, whatever. Why wouldn't you just trade him? Like, how many times do like front office people and GMs need to learn this lesson? Like you shout out
about their what fans and what people say of them, and if you trade them, then oh my gosh, how this work out?
You're mistreating your employees, but it's also you run the risk of what happened to the Jets, where the Jets traded for Hassan Riddick from the Eagles, and he basically said, I don't want to play for the Jets, and he hasn't shown up. So you go, okay, we'll trade Brandon Ayuk to the Panthers. He goes, I don't want to play for the Panthers. If I'm going to play for them, they need to give me X extension. That's now even more than what I wanted from San Francisco. And Panthers go, we're not going to give you that. And he goes, well, I ain't showing up. And then that team that traded for him loses because they lost the draft pick that they traded, even if it's a sixth-round pick.
And
they still lost that.
But, like, maybe I'm living in a fantasy world, and if this sounds just ridiculous, please tell me. But, like, if I'm managing a team, like, that's exactly what I would want. Okay, see, so, like, you don't want to go play to a team, so, like, the team matters, but you're clearly more interested in, like, securing a bag for yourself. That's not the type of person I'm interested in doing business with. Like, there's the door.
Yeah, that's what Kansas City's GM did. That's why Tyreek Hill got traded.
Yeah.
And not because Tyreek Hill, I don't think, was a bad teammate to anyone there. No one has anything bad to say about Tyreek Hill on Kansas City. It's just Kansas City's GM was like, he's going to demand X amount of money. He already wants an extension. Mm-hmm. We'll trade him, and there are plenty of talented receivers in the draft that we can get, who we will have for 5 years, like drafting Xavier Worthy. And we'll sign or trade for some guys that are kind of like rentals, like how you trade for a relief pitcher at the deadline. And they'll be good enough because we have Travis Kelce, who's essentially at a discount for the production he's had. And we have Patrick Mahomes, who, is stupid, but kind of like Aaron Judge, he's at a discount for his impact he has on the team. So we don't need to give Tyreek Hill an extension. So bye.
Our front office is just dense and stubborn. Yes. Then? Because, like, the Chiefs clearly the Chiefs clearly know the secret sauce.
So did the Patriots
to keep the machine running. The Patriots clearly knew the secret sauce to keep the machine running.
So did the Steelers and the Ravens, who they don't pay for receivers, and they're always
any dynasty you want in there. And that's going to be the determining factor, is that you don't have any player that's demanding or holding out for any massive contract because they're putting the team first. And if somebody did do that, there's the door. Why aren't more teams doing that?
Because it's a money.
NFL has become over the last
because you either emphasize how much money can we make as a franchise, or you emphasize, do I want to win a championship? And like you said, some people don't get it. They truly don't. They don't understand it, right? and other people are just afraid to get it because they look at the lost revenue of. I mean, think about how much money the Dolphins have probably made by having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on these stupid contracts. They've probably made a crap ton of money, right, in terms of jersey sales and like the highlights and the TikToks of all the stuff that they're able to do, right? So you either look at that and say, this is what I want, and you say, you know what, I bet we could win with it. And you convince yourself that you can, when in reality, all you're going to do is, make money for the billionaire owners, and you're not going to win anything.
Look at Cleveland right now. The owners have such an ego that they're not going to admit that signing Deshaun Watson for that stupid contract was a mistake and turn the reins over to the head coach and have him play who he needs to play. That team went to the playoffs with Joe Flacco last year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they got to play Deshaun Watson because we can't admit it was a bad contract.
Yep. And speaking of Joe Flacco, that brings me to my next bit. He's still out there tearing people up, by the way, this time with the Indianapolis Colts, as he's been filling in for the injured Anthony Richardson. But on Sunday, he had 359 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he led a fourth quarter comeback as Indianapolis tied division rival Jacksonville at 34 apiece in the fourth quarter. However, Jacksonville's kicker Cam Little converted a 49-yard field goal with 17 seconds left to give the Jags their first win of the season. Was that game in Jacksonville or not? Because I believe the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville. I think the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville in like 12 to 15 years. So
really?
a stupid number of time. I want to say it's like 10 years. At least 10 years. They have not won in Jacksonville.
Jacksonville was wearing their throwback jerseys.
Oh, the originals. The only ones that they should have ever had.
Correct. They need to immediately just go back to those jerseys. They're amazing.
Yes. Agreed. Maybe that's why they won.
September 14th, 20, or September
like 10 points a game for that.
September 21st, 2014, they beat the Jaguars 44-17.
So it's been 10 full years since they beat the Jags in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because that's encompassing Andrew Luck's tenure as well, right? So nuts. Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders, he had 238 yards through the air and another 82 on the ground as Washington had another blowout win, 34-13 over Cleveland. The Commanders are now 4-1, and they sit atop the NFC East, which is pretty amazing. After the Bills tied the game late in the fourth versus the Texans, Houston's kicker Kaimi Fairbairn converted a 59-yard field goal as time expired. Yes, a 59-yard field goal. They ain't no cheapie to give Houston the win and improve to 5-1. So kind of looking like D'Amico Ryans' squad is no fluke like last year was an anomaly, that they're pretty legit. Speaking of, possible anomalies, the Cardinals scored 14 unanswered points in the second half to beat San Francisco 24-23, something a lot of people probably didn't expect, especially in San Francisco. But what was interesting, the temperature of that game was like 100 degrees at field level for San Francisco. And they're in Santa Clara, but still, that's rare there at any time of the year. So I wonder if that had an impact. Dak Prescott threw the game-winning touchdown pass to Jalen Tolbert with 20 seconds left as Dallas beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh 20-17. And Kareem Hunt back on the Chiefs after a 6-year hiatus. He had 102 yards rushing on 27 carries and a touchdown as Kansas City improved to 5-0 with a 26-13 win over New Orleans on Monday night. Again, the Chiefs, that they look like the Patriots, the same thing. Will find production. We have the best quarterback in the world. We have arguably the best tight end in the world. We have the pieces. We have the defense. We have the coaches. We have the minds. We have the work ethic and the culture, most importantly. And we'll convert and find ways to win. So just pretty impressive there. Anything else before we move on?
I want to go back to the Commanders real quick. The football team, whatever.
HTTC?
Yeah, sure. Hail to the Commanders. Because I can't remember the last time that, obviously living in Virginia, I can't remember the last time that we had a football team that was worth being excited about.
RG3 his rookie year.
Yeah.
But even then, I saw the flaws. I don't see the flaws. The flaws to me were evident in that.
Dude, they're playing such good football up there in DC right now, and I was talking to my brother about it, and I think the way he put it, I think just encompasses it perfectly to like where they were and where they are now. He said, I'm going to buy tickets to go to a Commanders game, and it's going to be the first time I'm buying tickets to go to a Commanders game to see the home team.
Yeah, it's true.
And not see the away team. I thought that was like, that's the perfect way to put it, right? No more, hopefully no more like dollar tickets on Thanksgiving.
Why not? I'll take $1 ticket. Don't knock the discount tickets.
They don't need to do that anymore, though. Like,
No, they shouldn't.
Do you think they're gonna have trouble filling those seats, regardless of what like septic tank has burst overhead of people?
Goodness.
Like that, yeah. That's really the only thing that would drive ticket prices down is just where they play. But the product is real. I've been watching some of their games, over watching the Patriots games because but I've been watching some of the Commanders games, and dude, it's fun to watch. Jaden Daniels, real deal. Terry McLaurin, awesome pairing with him. They have such a good product right now, and I couldn't be more excited for the DMV right now.
Don't they have the only McCaffrey who's actually playing on a field right now?
I believe so, yes.
Right? Was it Luke or Max? Luke
McCaffrey
from
Rice.
Thank you.
The other McCaffrey.
I didn't know who.
I knew.
That one. Yeah,
I knew. You're not gonna get that past me, and I slip in. All right. Any other football stuff before we move on?
No.
All right, good. So that's going to take us to our Mimosa Minute this week, brought to you as always by Main & Co., the creators of the Modern Mimosa. Visit them at mainsip.com to order your Modern Mimosa today, and follow them on Instagram at main_co to stay up to date on their new releases and stuff. I think a mezcal margarita is on the list. A French 75 I think has come out. An Irish coffee was rumored. And I heard from our resident hockey expert, Scott Hamilton Griswold, that a beer is on the way or in the works as well. So look for them. Look for them at Indiana Fever home games. I know the Fever have been eliminated from the playoffs, but hopefully next year they're still there. Look for them at those home games. And again, buy their stuff online. They're great gifts for any bachelorette party type things, any bachelorette gifts to say, hey, would you be one of my bridesmaids? Their stuff is so good. It pairs great with a nice Bobo's fine chicken and cheese biscuit, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I know from experience. Right. So, again, the Modern Mimosa, Main & Co., they've been championing women's athletics since 2020. And so this week for our Mimosa Minute, we're going to stick with the WNBA playoffs. We've kind of been on them for the last few weeks for our Mimosa Minute. I think rightfully so. We are ending the semifinals. I think the last semifinal game is going to be tonight against the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx. They forced a deciding Game 5, so the Sun beat the Lynx Sunday 92-82 to force this winner-take-all Game 5 game. Alyssa Thomas of Connecticut had almost another triple-double because she had one earlier in the playoffs. She went for 18 points, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds in that game. And I believe, like I said, that game is happening tonight, probably as we're speaking right now in Minnesota. So we see if Nafisa Collier and company can avenge that loss and advance to the finals for Minnesota.
Is the Connecticut Sun named after
Mohegan Sun?
Mohegan Sun?
Don't they play in like Mohegan Sun Arena or something like that? Yes. There's got to be something with it.
You don't Connecticut Sun. We don't think of Connecticut as the Sunshine State.
Yeah. Aspen. California. Yeah, I don't know. I have thought about that too. It seems like it's something sketchy, like how the Browns are named after the former owner, Paul Brown, right? It seems kind of along those lines as well. But again, those two teams, Connecticut and Minnesota, play tonight for the winner to advance to the finals, where they will take on the New York Liberty, who have been the best team all year. They avenged their finals loss last year to the Las Vegas Aces by ousting them in the playoffs 3-1. They won 76-62 on Sunday. Sabrina Ionescu had 22 points and 7 rebounds, and Brianna Stewart had 19 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists for New York as they punched their ticket back to the finals to see if they can finish off the job they weren't able to complete last year. Anything else Mimosa Minute wise?
Yeah, if Kamala's not going to mention it, hockey started, and that means Jessica Campbell made her coaching debut, which is she's the first female coach in the NHL.
Heck
Well,
yeah, there you
what
go.
team is it? San Jose or Anaheim?
Seattle
Kraken.
Seattle Kraken.
She's up there with Bilesma.
Bilesma. He's the head coach, Dan Bilesma.
Yeah, remember he was doing the Coachella Firebirds, and Seattle fired their coach. He got the tap to come up.
That's right. And
I got one too. WNBA adjacent. Did you guys? I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Caitlin Clark is playing in an LPGA Pro-Am, the one that Annika Sorensen hosts, and
cool.
It's she's playing in I think it's November down in Florida. So that's going to be something cool to get your eye on. She seems pretty pumped about it. I had no idea that she was such a golf enthusiast.
A big golfer.
Is she really?
Yeah, she in one of her press conferences, I think they asked, like, what are you going to do with her time off? Because it's the first time she's had any time off in over a year.
Over a year, yeah.
Yes.
And she was like, I'm going to play as much golf as I can. And her teammates were like, what? You got to get back in the gym? Like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, I'm out there on the course every day. Like, that's what I'm doing.
Heck yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited. I hope I can find that like televised or streamed somewhere because I'm going to mark my calendar and keep.
Golf Channel might have it.
Annika Sorenstam said they're working on. I think she said they're working on getting like streaming or getting something like a TV.
Heck
deal,
yeah!
Because people are going to watch. They're going to want to watch Clark.
What would be on the Golf Channel otherwise?
Some college stuff probably or something.
In November, you have the. In November, I think the Charles Schwab is still going on as well.
Well, it's the new year. The new year starts in November, doesn't it? Like there's no break really. November, December, something like that. Like if you win a tournament, you're right. There's still something happening that the big guys aren't playing in, but you're playing in it because you're trying to get either your permanent your card or qualify for stuff. You win a tournament in November, you qualify for the Masters right next year. So yeah, you're right. There's probably something happening. Yeah. But I would rather watch a Pro-Am with some of these big name people than I would this golf tournament, right? It just means, even though it doesn't mean anything, it means more to a fan.
Yeah, right? I agree.
Yep. Anything else before we move on?
Nope.
So that's going to take us to our final segment, which is our favorite segment, brought to you as always by One Legacy Title and Escrow in Jacksonville, Florida. Visit them at onelegacyflorida.com to see how they can help you with your next house closing. You can also follow them on Instagram at onelegacyflorida to learn some about what they do and why it's important. But as always, talk to them, reach out to them, see if they can help you and what they can help you with. Because there's a lot of things that they do that you may not be aware of if you haven't bought a house before, or even if you have and you were kept in the dark about it. So they're always accessible. Visit them again at onelegacyflorida.com. One Legacy Title and Escrow, because your legacy matters. And this week, our favorites category that we went with was our favorite baseball catchers of all time. And who would like to start us off? Kamala?
I'll go.
Yes, your hand's up. Go.
Yeah, I'll go. Honorable mentions. I had to... all of my picks, honorable mention through the number one pick, are all going to be guys from that we would have watched, right? From I guess let's say 2000 on, or were active from 2000 on, right? So honorable mention, I had to throw in Weeders, because how many Orioles games did we go to where we got to see the graphic up on the Jumbotron, don't run on Weeders, right? Matt Weeders, that was a fun one. I always enjoyed watching him play at Camden. Adley Rutschman is an honorable mention. Got to have him in there. And then the series is over, so I'll throw Salvi in there as well. So 3 honorable mentions.
The series is over.
Yeah, the series is over. I'm licking my wounds, right? We're on to hockey, okay?
Yes, because I hear Baltimore's hockey team is top notch.
Yeah, right. We're on, yeah. So I'm on to hockey. The Patriots suck, so I'm on to hockey. But anyway, so those are my honorable mentions. Number 5, Joe Mauer at the 5 hole. Number 4, Molina, Yadier Molina.
Oh, name that Molina. Yeah. You got to name that Molina.
Yeah, we got to clarify, because I believe one of our earlier episodes was titled "The Third Molina."
That's our second episode.
Yeah, we go with Yachty. Number 3. I picked this guy just because I can still hear your dad yelling his name at the TV. Jorge Posada.
Yes.
I can hear your dad.
Was he chanting like valiantly in like a proud manner, or
Hip hip Jorge?
Dude,
Yeah.
I was in your house so much as a kid that like I probably heard everything from like heroic cheers to just demonic curses. Your dad's a very passionate fan. So
as
yes,
all New Yorkers are.
Jorge Posada in the 3-hole. Number 2 might be a little bit of a surprise, but I went with Russell Martin.
That's not a surprise. He's
Really?
awesome. He's awesome.
I thought
he was very much
him,
in my conversations. No, Russell Martin's fantastic.
Him would have been a surprise to you guys.
Yes, I'm shocked at that.
And then
because and he is Canadian too, by the way.
Yeah. It's tough, but give props where they're due, right? Russell Martin in the 2-hole. And then number 1, I don't really think conceivably it could be anybody else. It's Buster Posey. Buster Posey number 1.
It's a good pick.
Thank you.
It's a good pick.
That's my list. I'll hang up and listen.
Boy.
I've got honorable mention, someone who's playing in one of these postseason games, JT Real Muto. He's one of the best. He's one of the better defending catchers, especially throwing people out.
One of the better athletes to ever play catcher.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, he is one of the best athletes to ever play catcher. Love JT. Number 5, Joe Mauer.
Nice.
Yeah, just I know he stole these. Was it Joe Mauer that stole that MVP from Jeter, or was that Morneau?
They both did. I think it might have been. Morneau. Actually,
he has one of the highest averages for a catcher. Just got put into the Hall of Fame, correct?
Yes,
Joe
first
Mauer?
ballot.
Yep. Number 4, 3-time World Series champ, Buster Posey. He was just. There was something like he had that it factor, right? We talk about quarterbacks and having that it factor. Buster Posey had an it factor.
I wonder how many more home runs he would have hit if he didn't play in San Francisco.
That's a good point.
I mean, I got to think 50 more home runs in his career. Yeah. So, like, that's a big number. So whatever you look at his, because I don't even know if he broke 200. Maybe he did. But he's a guy who probably should have been 250 to 350 in terms of total home runs, is probably not there, and that hurts his Hall of Fame case. But you're right. You have to look past that because he was a preeminent catcher offensively and defensively for an entire generation.
One of the more underrated players.
Agreed. He's one of the few players who have ever won Rookie of the Year, MVP, and World Series.
That's incredible. His ability to manipulate the pitching staff too, like, awesome. Such a good catcher. Number 3, probably the best hitting catcher ever, Mike Piazza.
Solid.
Just absolute slugger.
It's a second Piazza reference.
Yes, it
Number
is.
2, a guy that I'm sure Nick loves. The captain of the Boston Red Sox, Jason Varitek.
There we go.
The guy that
I'm actually not familiar with this player.
The guy that I believe punched A-Rod in the face. That guy.
I think he pushed A-Rod in the face, and A-Rod punched him in the mouth. So
and then
you
Varitek
may have that.
Picked him up. Dropped
Yeah,
him.
I'm Derek Jeter.
And then number 1, name that Molina.
Benji.
No,
Yachty.
I went with Yachty.
Ah, damn.
Yachty.
It just, to me, it had to be Yachtier.
It's got to be Yachtier.
When you're a great defensive player, like, I feel like I'll find you. Right? Yachtier is best defensive catcher of a generation, maybe ever. He's so good behind the plate. Everything he did, I mean, he was also one of those guys that had an it factor. He wasn't a great hitter, but he would come up with some clutch hits in the postseason.
But he became a competent hitter. It wasn't like he started out almost like, oh yeah, liability type of thing. Almost he's going to bat 8th in the National League where there's 9th hitters a pitcher, right? But towards the middle to end of his career, he was a middle of the order hitter for a lot of that time, generating legitimate offensive production.
Yeah. There were some guys I left off this list too that I wanted, but we only have so many.
Yeah.
Yep.
Only have
I'll
so
hang
many.
up and listen.
Okay, so my honorable mentions, I went with Evan Gaddis, who came. Yep, I talked about him. I think that was that last week, the week before we did our favorite designated hitters. He started out as a catcher. He moved to DH because they deemed his defense like so deplorable he couldn't be back there. But actually, a lot of pitch framing metrics had him as a top half of the league.
He was
type
such
of
a
catcher,
massive body.
And he actually like pop times too. He like it was like, oh, he's so big, he must be so. He wasn't like a lot of the metrics that they measure people by. He was actually good enough to be a full time catcher, but never got the opportunity. I think because of optics, right? He wrong time, wrong place. Not enough analytics to help him at that time. But he was awesome. He was fun to watch. I enjoy watching him. My other honorable mention was Jason Kendall, who I'm shocked is not on anyone's list.
I had him and then dropped him and had him, and I waffled on that one.
Yes, I decided to go with him over Russell Martin, just because the more of the gym rat, he legitimately true gym rat. If there's ever the definition of this dude, no batting gloves,
real
hitting
scrappy player,
hitting leadoff as a catcher.
Last out, coach's son.
Yeah, and a guy who played forever because of how good he was defensively. Like we talked about Real Muto being such a good athlete. Jason Kendall was Real Muto before Real Muto. Real Muto has a little more pop than Kendall did, but Jason Kendall legitimately batted leadoff a lot as a catcher. That's unheard of. But he was a lot of fun, especially in some of those just horrendous Pittsburgh Pirates teams. Yeah. Number 5 is actually a backup catcher. It's Francisco Cervelli.
I knew that was coming.
Yes, Cervelli, who was the catcher on the, I believe, Italian national team for the World Baseball Classic.
He's an Italian Venezuelan.
Yes, that what he is? Yes, he is. He also played for the Yankees for a long time. I love a good backup catcher too. I knew I had to get a backup catcher on the list because to me they're like that backup quarterback where it's like Joe Flacco. Man, how valuable is he to have a Joe Flacco step up and do that well? And that's what Cervelli was. He was very good every time you put him in. A lot of his time, he batted close to 300. Yeah, you're not going to get any pop from him, but you're going to get great defense. You can get passion, energy, and a guy who's going to put the ball in play and be productive for you. And that doesn't always come around with catchers. Number 4, I went with Thurman Munson, the former captain of the Yankees, the actual true catcher captain. Not Jason Varitek, but Thurman Munson, who died tragically, I believe, in the mid to late 70s, maybe early 80s. I forget the actual date of it, but he died in a plane crash when he was flying it. We visited Thurman Munson Field. Do you remember that?
We did, yes. I do.
Yes, boy, can you describe to the listeners what we saw at Thurman Munson Field?
Oh, God.
Do you remember?
It was just a trash pile, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was sad. It was just a wasted field with overgrown.
It was worse than a sandlot.
Yes. But Thurman Munson was a fantastic player, just the leader of those Yankees teams and revered amongst Yankees fans, even posthumously. So I felt remiss to not put Thurman Munson on there. Number 3, someone who has really, really big hands, Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench may be the best, and actually I would say he is the best catcher to ever play. Because when you combine his defensive prowess, his leadership, the winning he had, his ability to throw out runners, his longevity, and his offensive production too, right? Because you talk about a Yadier Molina with the longevity and the defense, but Johnny Bench was phenomenal offensively, right? And that's something that doesn't get looked at, I don't think, as much because of the team he was on with your Pete Roses, your Joe Morgans, your Tony Perez's, of the world. George Foster, I think, was on those teams, right? There's a lot of dudes who could mash, but Johnny Bench is the best catcher ever, in my opinion. So he's at number 3. Number 2 is Mike Piazza, best offensive catcher ever. The cool thing I love about Piazza is he is kind of the Tom Brady equivalent in baseball. Yes, he didn't win those championships that Tom has, but Piazza was like a 40-something round draft pick. He was only drafted because Tommy Lasorda at the time, who was the manager or something with the Dodgers, knew his dad or whatever, and picked him as almost like a favor. It's like the 45th round. Who cares? We'll just take your kid, right?
I think he worked with Ted Williams when he was coming into the draft or something, and I think Williams told Lasorda or something. There was something with Ted Williams because there's that like video of Ted Williams like I think he's basically coaching Piazza in the cage, and he's like, "Whoa," he's like, "There's something here." And I think he told someone that like you need to draft this kid.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw like a scatter plot and was like the Hall of Famers by where they were drafted, and right. So you've got the top rounds kind of here. You got a couple late rounds, but then it's like just one outlier all the way off the page, and that's Mike Piazza. Like, it wasn't even like, oh, he's a late round pick by being a 12th round pick. He was like a 40-something round pick. He is off of the chart.
I would almost equate him. You said Brady. I would say Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Right, that's probably more accurate. Warner did win a championship, but it wasn't like Tom where he's the greatest ever. But yeah, that's the reason. One of the reasons I love Piazza. Like I said, he now lives in Italy. He runs the Italian baseball national team. Basically, he's in charge. Like his goal is to create a Italian baseball like academy, like legit people coming from Italy and making it to professional levels and having that Italian national team do some amazing things. They did advance pretty far. They got out of the group stage of the World Baseball Classic, which was pretty amazing considering they had to play their games out in like Korea or Taiwan or something like that. So he's done a pretty remarkable job growing that game over there in that country. So that's one of the reasons there. The other reason too, he has one of the arguably most important home runs in the history of baseball when he hit that home run after 9/11. I think it was the bottom of the 8th inning against Atlanta, and he took them deep dead center, whoever was pitching, I forget who it was, dead center as the first game played after 9/11 in New York City. So that was pretty amazing as well. And my number one catcher should be no surprise if you know me.
Crash Davis.
Oh,
no.
Should have been on
all of our.
Sure, you had Crash. I left him off because I thought for sure one of you would have him.
It's Jorge, but
it's Jorge Posada. But you're right. We should have all had Crash Davis and maybe Gus Sinski on that list as well.
Oversight.
And
that's
we're dealing with a lot of shit.
Yeah. Was it a live rooster? Is that what you need? And what's
none of us have any idea what to get them for their wedding as a wedding.
File where she's registered.
Candles are always nice gifts.
Candles make some nice gifts.
Let's start 2.
All right, start 2.
And what's Tom Berenger's name in Major League? He would have been a good one to have on there as well. Gosh, I should know that.
We should know that. That's pretty bad on our part too.
No, it is bad.
These are oversights.
These are we'll edit it in post.
Jake Taylor.
Yeah. We'll edit it in post because Rene Russo is the love interest in that as well. As we know, we love Rene Russo.
Yeah.
But no, my number one is Jorge Posada. I wore number 20 because of Jorge Posada because I was a catcher. Like you talk about being underrated defensively, right? Piazza was actually underrated defensively. He wasn't as bad as people made him out to be. Same with Jorge. Jorge was about like a league average defensive catcher. And when you combine it with his switch hitting, the lack of batting gloves, and the fact that he was productive from both sides of the plate, I think Jorge won a batting title or got close to winning a batting title one year late in his career. He was a really consistent, really good hitter at the plate and was labeled just as that, he's only out there. Like, they might as well DH him. He's not that good defensively, but he really wasn't a liability defensively. It was just, let's just poke at the Yankees and find weaknesses the same way they wanted to, put down Derek Jeter for his defense they did to Jorge. I love Posada. He's,
never won a
never won one. Bernie won a batting title, I think, and Paul O'Neill won one.
He hit,
but 328, I think it was something.
He hit 338 in 2007, but it wasn't good enough that season to win a batting title.
But yes, hip Jorge. He's my favorite catcher of all time, and it is sad that we all forgot to mention Crash Davis. That's embarrassing. Actually,
no Pudge either.
He's not my favorite catcher.
I know, but I was surprised that none of us had Pudge on there.
This is the favorites. This isn't greatest of all time. This isn't best. If it's best, why did none of us have Carlton Fisk, right, or Gary Carter?
I'm not saying that. I'm surprised that none of us had Pudge as a favorite. I know how the game works, Nick.
I'm not.
I know how this works.
Do you? Oh, do you now? Johnny, oh, do you? Is that it for us?
Let's call it.
Time is what he's indicating on his watch. All right, so that's going to do it for us here at What Caught My Eye for our latest edition. As always, follow us on all of our socials at WCME_sports. It's on X, it's on Facebook, and on Instagram. Visit us on our website at WCMEsports.com. As always, reach out to us if you're new to the show. We'd like to hear what caught your eye in case, again, we just had a massive oversight in our favorites category. If we have a massive oversight somewhere else, let us know. We will do our best to rectify the situation going forward. But for the boy, Stephen Vesci, for the man, Stephen Comlow, I am the coach, Nick Vesci. As always, be decent to each other. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.